Do I really need to address the hiatus? I feel like we're past that. Bro, a 3-week hiatus is crazy. I just started that channel. I was really on a schedule too. I don't know what happened. Well, no, I know exactly what happened. That's another video though. This video is very different from anything I posted on here. We're reacting to paranormal stories. So I just went on Reddit and found like a thread, and I haven't read any of these beforehand, so it's gonna be genuine reactions. If they're not scary, they're not scary. The way my brain works, I'm not gonna be scared right now and then watch. I'm gonna think about these stories later when I'm trying to sleep. Then I'm gonna be like, okay, so the question is, what was the scariest paranormal experience you've ever had in your life? All right, first up, sweet and salty anxiety. Wild name, but all right. I grew up in a seriously haunted house, so it takes a lot for something paranormal to really scare me. I've seen things, heard things, you name it. Startle me, sure. Scare me, nah. Here's the only time I've ever been actually scared. I lived in an apartment complex about 11 years ago, and other than some terrifying large wolf spiders, I never heard or saw anything paranormal. Then the old dude who lived across from me had a party one weekend and his brother died. Alcohol poisoning. Damn. His body laid there for over 12 hours because everyone thought he was sleeping it off. After he passed, I would occasionally hear some odd sounds, but nothing major. Then one night I was laying in the bed with my toddler waiting for her to go to sleep, and something blocked the light that had been shining into the room from the bathroom. I whipped my head up off the pillow and looked toward the door, and there was a black mass that was loosely in the shape of a person in the doorway. I would have rolled the fuck over and went to sleep. Girl. My whole body started tingling, and I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment because I was terrified and unsure if it was a real person who had broken in or something paranormal. I popped my eyes back open and it was gone. Nigga, what? Sorry, I popped my eyes up and it was gone. So I hopped up out of the bed and grabbed my shotgun and a couple shells and took off after it. The only door in the apartments that still had both locks. What? Sorry. The only door in the apartment still had both locks locked and the chain was still in place. Windows were closed and locked. I checked under every bed and inside all the closets and didn't find anything. I heard noises again, but never saw anything again. I moved a couple months later when my lease was up. Girl, that was sleep paralysis. Okay, next one. Broke Hufflepuff. For myself, I worked in a haunted bowling alley. Immediately no. Our deceased mechanic gave my ponytail a yank in a room where I was the only person verified by security camera, and there wasn't anything to catch my hair on. Ghosts be doing anything to get your attention. Why are you touching this girl's hair? Know your place. Where was I at? He liked to be playful and malicious, and wasn't malicious. Had one recently that happened to my husband though. He lived on a piece of property out in the swamp. First red flag. Why are you living in a swamp? Our house is pretty isolated. My husband woke up from a dead sleep to someone knocking on the front door. He said it was the exact mannerism I knock with, and then a voice said, "Honey?" Exactly the same way I do. He peeked over the headboard to the front porch and no one was there. That shit happened to me. That's another story for another day. You can see the front door clearly from our bedroom window, and there's no hiding spots for one of the local crackheads to mess with us. Oh girl. Living on a swamp is crazy. Like, I don't know what you expect. Okay, next one. So this then happened, I think 15 or so years ago when my grandfather passed away. In my culture, the dead are cremated and there are elaborate ceremonies performed. The body carried by people while chanting the name of a Hindu god, Ram or Ram, I don't know, after it has been cleaned, clothed, and some ceremonial colors put on it. I was never very close to my grandfather. I barely remember ever having much to talk with him, but my parents say I used to talk to him a lot as a child. Anyway, when he died, I didn't really know much about him, other than that he was the patriarch of the family and everyone respected him. I was barely 10 years old then and was supposed to stay at an aunt's house. Sneaky that I was, I managed to follow my mother when she left for my grandfather's house, unaware that I was a few steps behind her. Anyway, the ceremony starts, There's a lot of crying, and soon 4 people, including my father, my uncles, and someone I cannot now remember, carry the body on top of a structure made of bamboo and wood. They chant throughout the way. Nobody noticed that I was following them. Why are you following them? Oh my gosh. I lost my damn place. Okay, they reached the cemetery. There's a lot of crying, and I got bored standing at a distance. It's almost dusk, and I sit weirdly on a nearby platform. I would later come to know that it is sort of a memorial for the deceased. Sometimes between all of this is happening, I fall asleep. Hours go by, and when I wake up, there is no one, just the last flames burning through the pieces of wood. How did nobody notice this kid? What? I panic. I look around to see if there's anyone, but there's no one. I start running toward the pier, hoping perhaps... Is she trying to spell pier? Or am I tripping? Hoping perhaps some of my relatives might spot me by the fire and get a hold of me. Again, no one. I start crying. I look around to see if I could find my way to the street. Cemetery was on the outskirts of the town, and it was huge to my tiny mind. Rows after rows of those memorials I mentioned earlier. It's almost dark, and I can hear animals howling at a distance. Not animals howling. This is so dramatic. While this is all happening, I have a creepy feeling that I am being watched. It sends a shiver down my spine, and so this I don't remember ever being so shit scared. It was such a dark and nauseating feeling, a sense of impending doom. I cry louder and start running. Louder? You finna get attacked, sir. Or ma'am, I forgot. Little did I know that I was running deeper into the cemetery. Farther from the road that would take me home. I'm just on the fact that nobody noticed you following them, that you're a kid. That's crazy. I reach the edge of the open ground and catch my breath near the tree line. I can hear the faint voices coming from beyond the silhouette of the trees in front of me. Perhaps someone might be returning after gathering wood from there. I am again hit with a nauseating feeling, and it's stronger now. To top it all, every time I walk or run, it felt like I could hear footsteps. Absolutely not. Like someone right behind me. I turned around several times, yet found no one. I was so afraid at that point that I thought I might die. I took a leap of faith and ran toward the trees. The sound of footsteps behind me grew louder, and it seemed like whoever it was near, almost at arm's length. Like they could just reach out and grab a hold of me. I am audibly sobbing and shouting for help. There's barely any light, but I remember hearing people in the distance. Suddenly I'm in a clearing and see there's a community pond with a bathing area. I can see people in my family, and I ran towards. No matter how loud I tried to cry, there was no sound coming out of my mouth. Finally, an aunt saw me and ran toward me. The last thing I remember before fainting is a hand on my shoulder and my body almost freezing on the spot. What? I was sick for a week after that, had nightmares for years, and in general stopped going to my grandfather's house or even the town. To this day, I find it difficult sleeping in the dark and sometimes wake up with a cold sweat and a creepy feeling on my shoulder like someone was holding on to me. That actually sounds like it might be real, I'm not gonna lie. That's crazy. Like, but passing out, at least you passed out like when you got to your family. Imagine if he had like passed out in the woods. He would not be in this thread today, I tell you that. Next. It was about 4 years ago. It wasn't the first paranormal occurrence to happen, just the one that scared me the most. One night, my 2.5-year-old son woke my husband and I up when he crawled into our bed. I couldn't fall back asleep, so I decided to work on a project in my craft room. I was in there for almost 45 minutes when the small monitor to the nanny cams started rapidly flickering on and off. Nanny cams creep me out. I'm sorry. Like, I know you gotta watch your kid, but I feel like that's where you always see... Sorry. I feel like that's when you always see creepy ghosts and stuff like that, is when you're looking at your kid's nanny cam. That's so scary to me. I noticed the glow around the edges had stopped flickering. I picked up the monitor and turned to look at the screen. I saw my son standing as still as a statue in the middle of the living room, staring at the wall. If I have a kid like this, adoption. Because why are you staring at the wall? I started for the door with the monitor still in my hand. When I glanced down again, my son's head turned, only his head, and his eyes went directly to the camera in the upper corner of the room. He had no expression on his face at all. Group home. Yep. I'm playing. That's crazy. I left the room and went through the small kitchen and dining room, rounded the corner to the living room, and it was empty. The door to our bedroom was on the other side. I went in there and my son was sound asleep in the same position he was in when I left. What? My husband looked up from his e-reader. I asked him if he had woken up and went to the living room. He told me no. I asked if my husband had gotten up to go to the bathroom or kitchen, thinking maybe he just didn't see our son. Try to follow him. But my husband swears he hasn't left the bed at all. Our son has been peacefully snoring away the whole time. Like I said before, this wasn't the first time he had seen doppelgangers, but it was always so brief that you didn't really have time to get scared. Oh, there's time to get scared. What? Or have it completely registered yet. This was different. It wasn't just a glimpse. Above it all, the look on my son's face, that empty void stare. What? When he turned his head to face the camera, still even knowing, typing it gives me chills. Would you address that with your kid, like when they're older, if that happened to you? Like, I feel like I'd tell them that story forever. Like, I remember my mom telling me that I sleptwalked when I was like 7. I don't remember doing it, but she said I was trying to open the window to my room and like, yeah. So if I have a kid, like, you're never gonna hear the end of that. If you do that shit, that weird shit, why are you facing the wall? What? Next one. My first house was built in 1913. After moving in, I knew pretty much right away that I wasn't alone. Because out of the corner of my eye, I would always see movements in the mirror of the built-in china cabinet. I almost smoked back then. Can I read? I also smoked back then and came out of the bedroom one morning to find the ashtray flipped off the end table onto the floor. Lots of little things kept happening over the years, but I never felt threatened or scared. We, meaning the ghost spirits and I, coexisted in the house with no problems. That's a problem. My boyfriend moved in, and after a few years we got married. I'd talk about these things and he'd just look at me, never saying too much about any of it. He traveled quite a bit for work, so I was home alone a lot. One night I was on my computer listening to music and playing games. Plain as day, I was tapped from behind on the right shoulder 3 times. 3 times? Okay, now you dragging it. You touch somebody once, it's like, okay, ghost, that's what they do. But tap me 3 times? Girl. I screamed and jumped, turned around, and nothing. No one was there. Scared the crap out of me. I told my now husband about it, and then he started opening up about the shadows he'd see moving around in my office. He talked about the footsteps he'd hear in the house when he was alone. The tapping on my shoulder happened one other time after that, when we were moving out of the house, and it was pretty much empty. I was there alone cleaning, and I heard the footsteps he talked about. Whatever or whoever was there started to feel more menacing toward the end of our time there. I loved the house, but was pretty glad when we left. Hell yeah, what? It's always the old houses. Okay, I don't know how many more I'm gonna do. There's so many. Okay, next. Ellen Smithy, 82. I've had paranormal activity my whole life. Almost none of these have been unnerving, so I'll tell you my strangest one. Oh, she's seasoned in this. What? When I was 10, I lived in Southwest Texas. It got so hot in summer there that one day we literally fried an egg on the sidewalk. On this particular summer day, my mom had taken me and my friend to the library to check out and read some books. We had finished our reading and picked our books, and so we decided to play around with the elevator. There were only 2 floors to the library, and one of us would go into the elevator, and as soon as the door closed, the other would race down or up the stairs to try to beat the elevator. I was waiting for the elevator on the 2nd floor, and as it dinged, my friend took off, but as I stood there, the doors opened and I got a huge shock. The elevator was full of about 8 or 9 people. but they were all looking up at the numbers inside it, staring, unblinkingly like Zen cows. There was a man at the front wearing a black three-piece suit, gloves, a fedora, and a cane. Keep in mind, this was in Texas. I know you just said you fried an egg on the street. Why you got a three-piece suit on? During 110-degree heat. He was gaunt with a white mustache and slightly resembled the guy in Needful Things. Haven't seen it, I don't know that reference. He smiled wide when he saw me and said in a voice I'll never forget, "There's room for one more." "No, there's not!" "What?" I was freaked. No thanks," I replied. The elevator door closed as the man sort of tilted his hat. As I stood there in shock, my friend came back up the stairs, slightly winded. "Hey, where were you?" he asked. I explained to him I couldn't use the elevator because it was packed full. There was nobody on the elevator, he said. I look back on this often, and the question, what if I'd gotten on it, haunts me. I have absolutely no clue what would have happened if I'd gotten on, and it is sort of frightening for sure. I know how all of it sounds, but I swear to the higher power, this really happened. Oof, there's room for one more. No, there's not. What, 14 or 15 years old? I went for a sleepover at a friend's house. We stayed up late watching scary movies, etc. Typical sleepover shit. Anyway, we went to sleep in the same bed, and at some point in the night, I could feel tugging on the blanket. So I opened my eyes, and I seen a hand coming over me, grabbing the blanket and pulling it off of me. See, now you dragging it. When I'm trying to sleep, don't be pulling blankets off. Like, so disrespectful. At first, I just thought my friend was grabbing the blanket in her sleep, but I could still feel her back to mine, so there was no way her arm would be like that while back to back. I started to prop myself up, and I seen a man standing at the foot of the bed. I full panicked and jumped out of bed to run my ass off to the light switch. Oh, you're brave. You're brave, ma'am. You got up. I switched it on and the man was gone, but her bedroom door that was previously locked and closed was open, with the knob still locked. I closed the door and tried to get my friend to wake up, but she was a super heavy sleeper. Oh, I know he be pulling her blankets off and shit every night, and she don't even know. I have no idea how I managed to fall back asleep, but I did. I never stayed at her house again. She used to that shit. She slept like a baby. That's crazy. Okay, this next one's kind of long. It's going to be the last one. Okay. Been looking forward to a post like this to share mine. I actually like reading people's experiences more than trying to glean something for blurry security footage. So one of my closest friends growing up lived in a house that was beyond a reasonable doubt haunted as fuck. The house was definitely somewhere around a century old, or at least now it is, and our town was situated in a very woodsy suburb. Her and every member of his family had experiences there. Several of our friends had their own experiences there, and I had my own too. Honestly, it would be impossible to try and condense it down into one experience, and I believe it's worth sharing the accounts I can remember. I'll start with the least scary one, which was thankfully my own, and then move to the ones worth telling. Okay. During high school, my parents went on vacation, and for a few days, I stayed at this particular house of my friend. Let's call him Paul. I stayed in Paul's room in a sleeping bag on the floor while he slept in his bed. One morning, I woke up to someone whispering in my ear, like directly into my ear, my name. "You need to leave. Paul, you need to leave." Almost more of a warning. It definitely woke me up though. And immediately I'm thinking Paul was fucking with me, as he frequently did. But I turned around to my right, where he was sleeping, and realized he was completely out. I said, "What?" to him, thinking he was joking around, and he didn't wake up. He was definitely asleep. It was quiet, still too early for even Paul's parents to be up. Then it hit me. It still hits me today. I heard the whisper in my left ear, and Paul was on my right. Oh, girl. Or sir, sorry. Oof. Paul had other experiences in the same room. A few I can remember off the top of my head. For a time, he told me he suffered from sleep paralysis. Oh my God, same. On a consistent basis. He would see demons in his room and would be unable to move. Okay, I've never seen anything. Thank God. He told me that very frequently in his sleep, the standing fan by his bed would become a demon girl, and he would wake up with a jolt of adrenaline, having punched or thrown the fan down to the ground. He told me he would sometimes see someone standing in the closet his bed faced, both asleep and awake. Oddly enough, his sleep paralysis significantly decreased as soon as he moved out of that place. Bitch, I have a standing fan by my bed. Why would you tell me this? I rebuke it. Okay, next one. That floor, the second floor where Paul, his parents, and two of his 4 sisters slept was spooky. I remember getting weird feelings up there. One of his sisters claimed to be the ghost of a little boy in their bathroom. Claimed to see, the ghost of a little boy in their bathroom. His mom once opened the closet in her bedroom to find the same little boy standing there, looking up at her and asking for his mom. I heard about that one when I was in middle school, and it always creeped me out. It's always scarier when the adults see them too. To me, it's scarier when kids see it because kids don't really lie. Oof. Before my own experience, I generally thought Paul was just trying to fuck with me when he would tell me about these experiences. Most of our other friends were the same way, thinking Paul was full of shit, even after my own experience. At times I thought I just as easily could have dreamt it up. But then a few of those same friends, some of them complete non-believers beforehand, had their own experiences, and they changed my whole idea of the house. Why is this nigga still inviting people to his house? Hello? Once a year, Paul and his family would take a trip and have someone take care of their dogs. One of our mutual friends came over to do just that one day. When she got there that evening to feed the dogs, the house was dark and empty. For some context, the dogs were being fed near the kitchen, and adjacent to the kitchen was the dining room, which led further away into the entryway, and after that, a small living room. Well, not long after feeding the dogs, she heard a blood-curdling scream, a goddamn shriek, coming from that living room, like someone was inside with her. She booked it outside with the dogs. Not the dogs running too, period. Checked for intruders and saw no one was there. I'm pretty sure after that she called Paul, told him what happened, and he laughed and said, yeah, shit like that happens sometimes. Nigga, move? A couple years later, one of the bigger doubters in our group, who thought all of us were full of shit, had his own experience. Paul hosted a fair amount of parties back then. Lost my damn place. I'm sorry, wait, hold up. Back then, and usually we would use his basement to avoid any sort of noise complaints. So all of us are in the basement having a good time, and this particular friend of ours decides to run up and grab another drink from upstairs. Mind you, this friend is not the kind of guy to get completely fucked up. Like, he'll only ever have a beer or two at most. So for all intents and purposes, he's sober. He goes up and down the group. He goes up and the ground floor was completely empty as everyone is in the basement. There was a porch directly outside the dining room / entryway / living room, and it extended long ways across the back of the house. As our friend was walking into the dining room to grab a beer off the table, he sees a tall, grim-looking woman standing on the porch outside, looking through the window directly at him. He knows something is wrong because she's sort of featureless. What? How are you featureless? And also standing outside by herself, looking inside. He takes his eyes off her one moment, looks back, and she's gone. A few days later, he tells Paul what happened. And Paul tells him how he and his siblings have seen that same woman before. Our friend becomes a believer. Hell yeah. The basement was creepy as hell, but I can only think of one thing that ever happened down there. It was more of a storage cellar than anything. We still used it for parties and just generally hanging out, but it was so cluttered with random shit that the whole area Whole areas of the room were completely cut off. At some point in college, one summer when I was back home, Paul and his family were doing the annual Throw Old Shit Away Fest, and he openly invited some friends to come help. I came one day, and when I got there, Paul's dad nonchalantly told me, "You get to see the secret room." Turns out that in the far corner of the basement, behind a bunch of clutter, was a little storage closet nobody besides maybe Paul's parents, ooh, not the voice crack, knew about. We investigated it that day, and in it we found a bunch of random old shit. I can't remember everything exactly. I don't even know if Paul's family knew what this stuff was, but among all of it, I specifically remember finding this very old-fashioned vintage music box. You know, like the one in The Conjuring with the dancing ballerina? That kind of thing. We decided it was creepy and didn't want anything to do with it and left it in that closet. Throw it away. Well, on a different day, when I was thankfully not there, Paul and another friend were cleaning out the basement when suddenly the same music box started playing by itself from behind the door of the closet. They were alone and had not been in that closet all day. They bolted up the stairs. At the top of the house, there were 2 small bedrooms, both belonging to Paul's older sisters. This is the last one I will share, as it's the story that stuck with me the longest. The second oldest sister once had a vivid and intense dream in which she was herself was being exorcised. A demon was being forced out of her as a group of priests were standing over her convulsing body, shouting verse at her. And she remembered it being crazy intense. After enduring this for some time, she suddenly jolts herself awake and yells, and at the precise moment, a rosary she kept hanging on her wall flies from its place, crashes to the floor, and shatters into a bunch of pieces, completely on its own. She was covered in sweat and completely terrified. No one else in the room. Yeah, that place was fucking haunted. Alright, guys. Yo, some of these were actually kind of scary. Like, I'm gonna still sleep tonight, but damn. I guess that's the end of this video. It's kind of long. I read a lot of stories. Alright. I'll see y'all next week. Maybe. My hair looks like that one Prince album cover.